Hey everyone! Ooh, we have 3 people watching so far. I'm excited. Yay! About a minute ago we had nobody and I was like, I'll be talking to myself today. So I'm Michelle. I'm the office manager at Apogee, and Tim is out of the office today because his daughter is getting married tomorrow. So he's not here. So I'm filling in for him today, and I have a couple of questions that were emailed in earlier this week to answer, and I'll take any questions you guys have in the chat. So just put those in the chat there. I'm pointing there, like you can, there maybe. And then we can look over those too. And if we have time towards the end, then we'll talk about Launch Visualizer and RockSim and anything else that pops into my head. But we have a couple of really good questions today to start. So just giving people a little time to join in. I started the stream a little late. I was having weird technical issues as always. What Tim has in his range box session. Tim might be willing to do that. It's not exactly a RockSim Live, so that might be a newsletter article, because I'm sure you're referring to the article that came out this week on what's on Tim's messy desk. So for that, since we're kind of talking about that, let me show you. On our website, we have a weekly newsletter that goes out every other week. It's a PDF or an article, written article, and then on the off weeks, it's a video tutorial. And those are available if you're on the home page. You just scroll down, and the newest ones are down here, the latest model rocketry how-to and the latest model rocketry newsletter. And this week there was 2 articles in the Peak of Flight newsletter, and the second one was Tim's messy desk. And if you go here, you can read it. We have a PDF version you could download, you could print out, and we also have an HTML version which you could read. That one's especially good on your phone, if you read on your phone for that. And down here, there's also a really interesting article that Tim wrote about why motors are named the way they are, and specifically why they're maybe not. It talks about the Estes A10 and the Estes A8 motor, which are not named based on current naming conventions for motors. So they're kind of odd ducks, and Tim theorizes why. But yeah, the second article was about Tim's messy desk. And if you'd like to see what Tim's messy desk, I actually cleaned Tim's messy desk since he's out of town for him. So it's not so messy anymore. So hopefully when he comes back, the organization will help him do what he needs to do there. So yeah, this is on our website. And to get to past articles, if you're watching this maybe not in the next week, if you go to How To and Guides, Peak of Flight newsletter, and then all newsletters, and that will bring you to all the newsletters that have ever been written. We were on 576 this week, so 576 newsletter articles or more, because some of them had multiple. So that's super helpful. I use this all the time for customer questions or my own questions or things for that. So yeah, and Carla says, or Michelle or Vern Estes' range box. I don't have a range box because I don't fly enough to have one. I just borrow from Tim's. That's the nice thing about having a boss who does rockets. So yeah, so that's just the website there. So that's a good resource. There's all sorts of things on there for that. So I will start with the questions that people had for this week. So Charles Garnes, Chuck, wrote in asking about how can you show how to upscale a fin set on RockSim. So he's thinking of upscaling an Estes Colossus with Peregrine components. And so he'd like to be able to print out the fin template of the appropriate size fins for the model. So I don't think I have an Estes Colossus, but I do have a Peregrine. So I don't know if he would want to do that. So we'll do this. We will let's open up a smaller rocket because the Peregrine's already pretty big. So we will go to, my brain is forgetting where I'm going here. Applications. I'm on a Mac, so this is navigating on a Mac. the design files are stored either in your programs folder on Windows or on your applications folder on a Mac. And then you open up your RockSim folder, and in there is a folder called Designs, and you'll open that up, and that's where all the designs are stored that come with RockSim. So if you're looking for a kit, especially all Apogee kits are in here unless we've released something new since then. And if you need files that aren't here from kits we sell, those are available on the kit pages on the website. I can show you that real quick. Let's just pick an Avion because that's easy. So you'll find the kit page just like you're going to buy the kit or you want to check the motors. And we have these nifty shortcuts here, or you can just scroll down the page, but that'll take you down, just scroll you down the page. And then the RockSim file, and if you click, it'll download. If you click for some reason and it shows you a bunch of text, all you need to do is right click and then save link as, or save target as, or save file as, depending on which browser and which operating system you're on. But that will save the file for you. But we're going to use the Avion, which is already in this. So I'm going to Apogee Components, and then the Apogee Avion, and this one's in a folder. So some of them are in folders and some of them are not. And the reason for that is you can actually add your decals to a rocket in RockSim. So if I pull up, well, we'll just pull up the Aspire, and then we look at it in 3D, and I'm going a little fast here, I know. So I've opened up a rocket kit and I've changed it to 3D view. So this is the Aspire kit, but there's no decals on it, just kind of plain. The colors have been changed on the parts, but it's just plain. But if I open the Avion, you'll see the Avion's in a folder, and there's the RKT file, which is your RockSim file. And then there's also PNG files, and those are the decal files. So if you use those, so you can see on my Avion, I have decals. And you might notice that they're backwards. There was a bug in RockSim that I think has since been fixed, or is going to be fixed in one of the next releases. I lose track with all the testing we're doing right now. But what happened was that a lot of the decal files for like the ones we made, the bug was that it flipped them. So we manually flipped them to make them look right. Well, now that we fixed the bug, some of the decals are backwards. So we'll just have to flip them one at a time. We just haven't done that in the files that are in RockSim, but you can see I've got my super nifty decals on here. So to scale a rocket is super easy. You'll just go to the rocket menu and scale by a scale factor of, and so say I want to do it 2 times the size of the rocket. So I want to make it, 200% Avion. So you'll need to know your scale factor. And it kind of looks just like the Avion was zoomed in, but what you can see is you'll go to the components list and pull up the different parts. Oops. Uh-oh. I'll have frozen. This is a test. I'm in a test version of RockSim, so. And then, as Tim's mentioned before, when you do these RockSim lives, you're running the software to run the live, and then you're running other software, and then you're running RockSim, so the computer freezes up sometimes just because you've got so much pull on your CPU. Let me try. Oh, I know. It's not frozen. I have the pop-up window popped up. It popped up on my other screen. Silly me. So I have 2 monitors, my laptop and this one, and it opened up on the wrong one, so that's why I was locked out. So we've opened up the body tube now. And the Avion is normally a 24 millimeter diameter, which is basically 1 inch, like 0.95. But now you can see it's 1.95 in diameter. So we've doubled the size. So for the fin set, this gets a little weird because, like, for example, the body tube, we've doubled the size, but like there is not a 1.95 inch body tube out there. So you have to kind of fudge it a little bit, or if you know what body tube size you're working towards, say you wanted it to be a 4-inch rocket and you're starting with a 0.95-inch rocket. You'll need to figure out that scale factor. So the body tube, usually the nose cone or the body tube you're going to be kind of your limiting factor on when you scale a rocket, because you're just locked into what's commercially available. If you're making your own parts or you're 3D printing parts, you can make a true, like, 100 scale or 200 scale or 0.75 scale or whatever. But if you're just coming up with a design but using a commercial, like sounds like he's using Peregrine parts for the Colossus, so you would need to know your scale factor from Colossus to Peregrine to start. So your nose cone, your body tube, those are going to be probably your limiting factor for your scale. And then from there, your fins, you can just cut however big you want. So once you've set your scale, then you can go to your fins. Take this out of 3D because that's there. And then you'll have your fins, fin template or fin design. And if you want to export it, I'm going to move this back here because it's confusing me. You're just going to go File, you can see all this, yeah, File, Print, and then on this screen, you're going to choose what you want to print. So I don't need side view, top view, base view of the rocket. So I don't need any of the rocket drawings. For parts list, I don't need the parts list, but I do need a template, and we'll open this up for the fin set. So, and then I don't need any simulation. This will print all your motor, like your flight data. So right now, all I want is the fin set. And then I'm going to go over here, and since we're doing this on the internet, I'm going to print to PDF so you can see it printing. And then we'll print this. Be aware that if your fins are really big, it's going to print on multiple sheets because it's going to default to an 8.5 by 11. We're working on printing features to make it so you can do different things, but it's actually more complicated than you think based on the way this is. But so I went ahead and printed that. It's going to pop up which printer you want to print to. It doesn't matter because we're not actually printing. And then hopefully this didn't give me a thing, so try this again. Print. So there we go. So printing to applications, RockSim, blah, 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 PDF prints. That's the default right now. One of the new versions that's going to come out, I think, has it set so you can choose where you want this to go. That's one of the features that's being added in the next release. We're just squashing those bugs, as Terry says, right now. So, so then I can go to applications and put it in the 10.3 folder and PDF prints, and then my fin sets from today. And I have to wait for my Adobe to open up. And so this is my fin template, and since it's small enough, it fit all on one page because we just took a little rocket and made it a little bigger. But it might be a multi-page, and then you just have to cut them out and tape them together on your whatever you're gluing it onto for that. So yeah, so that's how you would upscale the fins, is just upscale the rocket. And then you probably want to save your save as, so you don't want to save I don't want to save over my Avion that's the right size. So I want to save my file as, Avion 2 times or something. Put that somewhere else there. So, so the next question we had, so I have a non-RockSim question, sort of, and then a RockSim question. So we'll do the RockSim question first. And this one I meant to look at before we started, and then I forgot. And so somebody sent a RockSim file, and they said, not sure, this is Bill, and Bill says, not sure if you can help me on what I did wrong on this, probably on the tower. Something's wrong with this. The rocket weighs, the actual rocket, the physical rocket in real life weighs 284 grams, and RockSim says it weighs 1,358 grams. So nearly 7 times the weight. And I can show you, so I have RockSim file, So this is what the rocket looks like in real life. So this is what Bill sent us, is this really cool mercury redstone. So yeah, so it's a little hard to know without having the rocket in front of us to see why it's so much. But the obvious thing that I would do is I would just start looking through my parts. So when I open up my part, it'll say calculated component mass 0.031 grams. So this is the very tip of the little tower here. That's not 1,300 grams. And so literally we're just going through and looking for anything that looks suspicious. That's my first check. Now, and anytime you have anything wrong with a rocket file in RockSim, just stopping and kind of thinking, you know, what's the problem you're trying to solve? So in this case, I've got a rocket that only weighs this much, but RockSim's saying it's weighing a lot. So then looking for anything obvious. So we're just looking for a part that seems like a lot of grams. So this piece is 11. This seems a little, oh, see, I already see a problem here. So this tube has an outer diameter, well, maybe not. Maybe it is solid. But this tube has a outer diameter of 0.65, but it has no inner diameter. So that essentially makes it solid. Bill, maybe that is the case. So maybe it's solid. 11 grams is maybe a little heavy for that. You would know better than me on the actual weight. You say it's polystyrene, so it could be kind of heavy. It's hard to say. And then the tower, so this one is not solid, it's hollow. 0.23 grams, that looks good. So this piece, this is another one that's solid here and weighs 14 grams. So I'm wondering if these are actually solid pieces or not, because that would be your big check there. And then, oh, holy cow. Okay, so this capsule weighs 238 grams. It is hollow as well. So Bill, really, this is what I would do. I would go through, if you can weigh, even if you can't weigh the individual parts, since you've already built the rocket, you probably can take like the tower off. And so you can add, you know, all these weights together to just try and see, like, you know, if my whole tower weighs, you know, 50 grams, well, this piece right here weighs 238 grams by itself. So that'll kind of, you know, clue you in. The other thing that sometimes can get heavy is just checking your fins. Your fin set, just and making sure your material's right for those. The way RockSim works is you have a part and you pick a material, and the material has a density in the database. So if you go up to, I want to change this, the rocket menu and edit database materials, this is our density screen. So this is how RockSim knows how much everything weighs. I have a part that's, you know, any of these 1/8 inch aircraft plywood, and then it's got the density listed in kilograms per meters cubed, just because that's how it got entered in the system, and it's 330. So if you come across a material that just seems wildly wrong on all your parts, then it might be that the density is incorrect, or that you've picked the wrong type of something. So the plastics and the polystyrenes sometimes get hard because they can vary in density. So if you need to, you could add your own. The other easier way to not even mess with that is, so say we've got this this capsule, and we open it up, it says 238 grams, and you weigh it, and it weighs 10 grams. So you use the mass override here, you're gonna turn it on, you're gonna type the weight, the actual mass of it, we'll just pretend it's 10 grams, and then you also have to put in the center of gravity for this piece. A quick and dirty cheat for this is turn off the mass object and grab your CG of your part. Let's see. Make sure I'm doing this is showing. So you'll pull the CG of the part as it is, or you can just use the tip of your finger and measure it. I feel like it lists the CG somewhere and I'm spacing on this normally. So I'm sorry. I know that it's listed somewhere. Usually I just measure it with my finger if I can. But let's say, okay, so this piece is 2.6 inches long. The mass is going to be probably heavier at the kind of the base there. So let's say it's 2 inches back. I don't know. Bill, you'll be able to actually do this. So you'll make sure that's checked and then you'll set your mass there. So immediately my mass has dropped down from the 1300 to the 1200. So there are definitely some heavy things in here that are causing this. I don't know that we want to go through all of them, but Bill, that's what I would suggest, especially since you've got the real life rocket in front of you, whereas we're just making up numbers as we go here. But yeah, so I would check each part against the real life as much as you can weigh it, and something's going to stand out to you. And then just honestly just use the mass override. That's so much easier than trying to figure out the density of the material you're using for things like that. So that answers that one. And okay, so Rosa says, in the parts tree window, you can show or hide a mass object. When using hide, should it not indicate this besides the mass object? So you can't hide, I mean, you can hide in the parts tree, you can hide all the parts. So you can hide it like from your view, but it doesn't hide the parts from the file. Like you can't turn a part off. Like I want to try simulating a rocket. Let's just go back to our, let's go to the Aspire here. So I want to try simulating the Aspire, and I've got a mass object here. And so I load my motor. Oh, I keep clicking on the wrong one. My brain's not working this week. So we'll choose a motor that'll go in there. Let's pick a fun one. We'll use a G77. Okay, so we're gonna launch our rocket. So just to see, it goes 3,800 feet. Now if I go back to my parts and I say I wanna find out how high I would go without this, you can't turn this off. There's no way to just say, try running it without it. Instead, you have to delete the part from the list. So you would just, you can right click or you can click delete and it'll say, sure you want to, and you click yes. So that removes it from there. As long as you haven't saved, you know, you can quit the file and reopen it and it will still have the mass object there. If you want to play around with it, usually what I do is like we did with the Avion, I'll save it an alternate file. So we'll save as like Aspire no mass, just so I know what changes I've made to it. And then we can come back here, and if you've flown this before, you can load the engine. That'll put the engine back in. It's actually already loaded, but I can rerun it now, or I can pull the old features and edit it. So now we can go ahead and fly it again, and without the mass object, it's only going 3840. It's going 3846. So that must have been a really small mass object that I deleted. But yes, you can't turn parts on and off. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, Rosa. So that the only way to hide things is literally just to collapse the parts tree from view. The only other thing I can think of is if you've got a mass override turned on. Say I turn this on, so it will tell you the mass override is on here, but it won't tell you. Yeah, it doesn't like 0 grams. Shocker. It won't tell you here that mass override is on. So the only way you'll know is if you go in here for that. So 3D printer guy asks, what is everyone's favorite motor? So if you'd like to weigh in the chat on your favorite motor, That's a hard question because it depends on the kit you're flying and what you're trying to accomplish. The Aspire that I threw in that G77, that's a cool one because you can go supersonic on it in an Aspire. You may not get it back because it's going to go 30, 100 feet, but you can launch it. Oop, just keep opening on my other monitor. And so if I click here, I can see. So right now, like, you can watch the acceleration in G's here. So we pop up to, I think I saw a 56 in there at one point. So yeah, that's kind of a fun one. So I like those for a lot of rockets, the G77, G78, G79s. They're just really versatile for those bigger, like the Aerotech kits or any bigger, 2.6 inch or BT70, 24 millimeter mounts, or 29 millimeter mounts for that. Those work really well if you want to go really high, and they're pretty flexible there. So Rosa says just right click on the mass object. So let me reopen my Aspire. Save your changes. No. I've never seen that show hide before, but I don't think it does anything. Huh. I've never seen that before, Rosa, so I will investigate for next, and Tim can talk about it next time maybe. Interesting. I have a sneaking suspicion. Oh, no, you can't do that. It's only for mass objects. Interesting. See, there are things about this software that I've been using this for 20 years and I didn't even realize was a thing. So I think that might be a holdover from something else that isn't active now. So I will find out. So that's very interesting. Thanks for pointing that out, Rosette. This is what's cool about interacting with people, people who use rockets and use RockSim, and is that everybody uses it differently. And so it's always interesting when people say, oh, I did this and it didn't work, or I did this and it was super easy. And I was like, I didn't know you could even do it that way. It says it takes off the total mass, but I am not seeing that here. Oh, it is. You're right. Wow. Interesting. I didn't notice it changing that before. But you can see that mass does change by 2.54. So interesting, Rosa. I learned something new today. But yeah, you're right. It probably should indicate somehow. I'm not sure there's functionality to like change the on-off with that, but I will pass that along. See, you learn something new every day in rocketry. It's really fun. We were talking today about customer questions that came up that I went on the rocketry forum to look for answers because I don't know. We don't deal with everything all the time. So aliens put it there. I agree, Terry. Aliens must have put it there. It's the only solution. And there are also times when, the programmers and Tim go back and forth about something and they add a feature that just slip. It's so minor or something like that that it doesn't get mentioned in like a meeting or in a conversation where everybody's involved. And so there are times when there are things that Tim's like, it's always been like that. I'm like, it's never been like that. But that's what's cool about all this stuff. So the last email question I had from Gary Slater, he asked, show how to display single-use motors and then explain the process of figuring out which casing they will need for reloadable motors by looking it up on the website. So I'm not 100% if he means, I get the website part, but I wasn't sure if he meant show single-use motors in RockSim. Or like finding only single-use motors. So you sort of can and you sort of can't, depending on what you're trying to do. I have actually asked for some features to be added to RockSim that just haven't quite made it in yet. we don't get all the features we want. You don't always get the features you want. We want to add them, but there's priorities and bugs and things that come first. So choosing a motor, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick something smaller because I'm going to run the recommended motors, and with the bandwidth pulling on this computer, my fan's like, wee. We'll run a smaller one. So you can run, most of you guys probably know this already because you're here every week, but you can run all the recommended motors for a rocket. So I've got an Avion kit and I want to know what motors work for it. You can run them one at a time, which is how RockSim used to be. And then we finally added in 10 the recommend motors features. And so if you click on that button and you set your launch guide length, you can run all the motors that fit in this motor mount, which is 18. You can also check the box to say run 13s too. This was not a good example because these are, well, there are some reloads, I guess. But so in this screen, you can choose engine type, single use, and it will only run the single use motors. And then if you click use recommended conditions, that's going to use the recommended launch conditions up here. These are the conditions we use to make our motor charts and things. If you want to, you could change some of these. Ooh, sorry. If your elevation, like this says 700 feet elevation, it's just a standard one. We're over 6,000 feet here, so the air's a little different. But we'll just run this. So it's going to run all of our recommended motors. But it's only going to run the single use because that's what we put in there. So that's how you can do it, is to filter by that. Once you get to this screen, unfortunately, there is no single use column. This is something I have requested because I think it would be really handy for people to know single use versus reload. If you know your manufacturers, it'll work to a point. For example, Estes, Quest, Klima, they're all single use. So I know that. So I don't need to worry about that. But if we run all the engines and do that, there will be some Aerotech motors in here. And Aerotech has both single use and reload. So that's where you run into the problem of, is this a single use? Is this a reload? In this case, in 18 millimeter, they're all reloads. So that just happens to be the case. But if you run a 24 millimeter or 29 millimeter, you're going to run into single use and reload ones. So if you really only want, say you're not a reload person, reloads, I don't want to deal with putting them together, or they're too expensive, or I'm just starting out and I'm not sure what I want, all totally valid reasons for not using reloads. Then you can use this feature, or if you do one at a time, so if you just want to do one motor, then you would go to choose engine, and here you can also use the type filter. Be aware that for the motor databases that are in RockSim right now that came with them, they should all be good, but rocket motors come in 2 file types. Show you, well, they come in 3 file types technically. Let me go to the internets here. So you can download, if you have a motor that you can't find in the system, the motors in RockSim should be up to date, like the list of all the motors should be up to date through, they actually have a couple Quest motors that aren't even really in it. So should be up to date as of now. I've had people say that they can't find motors in there. Most of the time it's just because of filter issues or settings. So when in doubt, set all your filters to all, show all engines, all, and then I sort by engine code. That's the easiest way to just find things. But be aware, so the ones we did are all named together, the redone setup for RockSim 10. Going very fast now. But the motor files you download from, say, ThrustCurve or Cesaroni's website, like Cesaroni's motors, technically have numbers before the name. So if I'm looking in the M's, I'm never going to find this motor because it's not in the M's, it's in the 5198s. So just be aware, if you download motors from other places, they may be formatted differently. They also, like I said, they come in several file types. And so see. I don't know if, pick a motor that has different ones. So they come in a couple different file types. So here we've got RASP and RockSim. So a RASP file will download as a .eng file. A RockSim file will download, oh, you can't see this. I'm pointing at things that are below. So the RASP files download as a .eng. The RockSim files download is .rse. These are motor files for RockSim. The RSE files include things like this is a reload, this is a single use. So when we were looking at these filters, these are included. If you download an ENG file, that is not included. So it's going to just come up as unspecified. So even though it may be a single use, a reload, or a hybrid motor, it may not show up as that because it's not, because that's something you have to actually specify in the file type, in the file when you're making it. And the ENG files are just different format and they don't save that information. So be aware if you want to use the filters, that's why sometimes they can't work, is because it's the data that's put in. That's always the issue with RockSim, is a lot of the complaints we get end up being somebody put in incorrect data. That Mercury Redstone file we were looking at for Bill, you know, I mean, he didn't imply that RockSim was broken, but like, you know, something's wrong, and it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's the data you put in for the data you get out. For that. And yes, there can be bugs, but in this case, it's not a bug, it's just the way the file types are made. So that being said, he was asking about how to find this on the website. So if you want to look a motor up, the easiest way is just to type it in. If you type in a motor without the delay, the -4, -8, it should pop up the options here. So this comes in a 4, this F20 comes in a 4 and 7 second delay. So you say, I saw an F20 in RockSim, I don't know if it's a reload or a single use. Just pop it in there and you bring up the page and it will say right here, 29mm single use. You know the diameter and you know the type. So the single use ones are these pre-molded for the bigger mid-power, high-power ones, the pre-molded casings. Obviously the Estes ones look, you know, like this. They're the little brown tubes. Okay, so now I've got a motor. We want to look up a motor that ends up being a reload. So let's pick a F24 motor. So we pull this up. The first clue will be the picture. See, it's not that nice little plastic casing there. It's the pieces. So a reload motor, you have to have a casing for. You can't just fly it, because what you get is a bag of pieces. And if you can't fly it with just pieces. So you need a casing too. So on our website, we always list the casing, which is not included, here. So it will always tell you which casing you need. So if you're not sure, you can click here and see which casing it is. If you're on the casing pages, if you scroll down, it will actually show you a chart of all the motors that fit in that casing. So this F24 hardware set will fit all of these, anything from a D15 to an F39 24mm. So that's a good case because it holds a lot of motors. Some of the casings, for example, like the Aerotech 29100, hold 2 motors. So if you want those motors, that's great. That's the perfect casing for you. But if you want more variety, then you might want to look and see if there's an alternative to this case, because it only holds the 2. The other thing you have to be aware of if you're looking for a motor, so if you don't know what motor you want, you say, I'm looking for motors, I'm not sure what I want reload wise. If you go into the shop menu, rocket motors, so you can search by, you can pull up motors by 13, 18, 24, 29. You can pull them up by manufacturer, Estes, Quest, Aerotech, Cesaroni, and then also the casings versus the casings, versus the single use. So for example, let's pull up the 29mm motors. This is going to, it'll start with a list of like 10 motors, but if you scroll down, there's a comparison chart. So I have an Aspire rocket. It's 29mm. What motors do I want? You really want to go to the kit page and look at those motor charts, but I'm trying to decide if I want a casing or not and what motors will fit. So this will show every 29mm motor. And then at the top we have filters. So you can filter by single use, just by Aerotech single use. So the just single use will have the Estes single use, the Quest single use, the Aerotech single use, in their Apogee single use. Or you can filter by reloads, or you can filter by a specific case. I have a 2940-120 casing. You can either go to the 2940-120 casing page, which will just show those motors, or you can come up to this table and use the filter there. The one thing you have to be aware of when you're using reloads, for the smaller reloads, we sell them with the closures on the end. So you are going to buy a 24 casings, here we go, or 29 casings. You're gonna buy a 2960, 2100, 29120, 4120. You can see in the picture these have the end closures on here. They're a little different depending on the style, but so it's got the closures included for this, and it should tell you on the page, reload hardware includes case, forward closure, and aft closure. Once you get past these sort of like mid-power casing style, the style or the size, then we sell them without the closures. So you will still need the end caps to go with it. This is just the tube, but you still need the ends to hold the casing together. And the reason that we kind of do it this way is generally people who are buying the smaller ones, they're either new or they're using it for specific things, or the closures are not interchangeable. Once you get to these bigger ones, you can actually save money by buying, you could buy like a couple different lengths and then buy one set of closures and just swap the closures between these 3 different motors. So you have to buy those separately. So be aware if you're looking at reloads, which casing you need to buy. You need to make sure when you do that you also are checking for closures to see if you need them as well. So just a thing to keep an eye on. If you're not sure, check the pages. Like I said, we always put that note on there. And if you're really not sure, give us a phone call, shoot us an email, and we'll help you out getting that sorted out for that. Okay, so let's see if anybody has questions. Marcel says, I would like to be able to click on a mass object and have RockSim identify it without scrolling through my parts list to figure out what it is. Can this be done? It should be, but you can do it with all the other parts. I think the problem is that because it's picking the external part, it won't let you do that. That's the other one. So it looks like you can't do that right now. You have to use the parts tree. So unfortunately, it looks like for the function, because we added this feature in 10, the ability to click on a part and have it pull up in the parts tree. But apparently mass objects are excluded from that. So, but the parachute works, which is interesting because that's an internal. I thought maybe it was just internal parts, but so I'll have to ask Tim about that, if it's just maybe as an oversight or if there's a reason for it, because yes, that would be handy. Ark, you are right. Like in this case, I've got 2 mass objects, and so I have to figure out which one's the mass and which one's the shock cord for that. So yeah, so I will check on that. There are 3 mass objects of this rocket. Mass, engine hook. I was like, what's the 3rd one? So yeah, I will pass that along as well, Mark. See if that's something we can tweak in the future or not, because that would be handy. And it's a little annoying that it's inconsistent across the parts too. So I agree. So it looks like the only other thing that had come up earlier was Terry says to design a flying saucer. RockSim doesn't really do things like that. You can make it work, but it's at that point it's not, because the coefficient of drag on a flying saucer is so different than a regular rocket. You could make it, something that would look correct, but I wouldn't necessarily trust the simulations on that unless you can figure out the coefficient of drag of your rocket for that. So I guess now I will talk about the launch visualizer a little bit. So we haven't done that yet, and that's Tim's baby. They were supposed to add a new feature overnight, and I didn't check to see if it's there. So we can check together. Looks like they didn't add it. They are about to add. They were supposed to add last night at midnight, a feature to edit these. So this is your flight data. So this is just like this table in RockSim. So your flight simulations. So this is all the flights that you've flown before. So this is the flight history for this Avion rocket. Yeah, Avion, it's up here. So you have a couple options here. Rerun the simulation. And so this is going to rerun. It's just going to pull all the stuff and rerun it with the settings that you had for your original flight. And then a little Avion zooming out a little bit. Watch that go, and the parachute pops out. So, and then the edit feature, so there's also, I guess that's not in here yet either, load engine. So this is the same things that you have in regular RockSim. When you right click, you have rerun, you have load engine. So it would, in that case, what it does is, these are old. These are all old files from before we updated the motor database, so it's kind of grumpy. But it'll load the engine back in that you've flown before, but it'll leave all of your other flight settings. So if you load an engine, it's your flight events, like if you tell the parachute to deploy at a different time, if you have your launch guide length at a different amount, your settings for the temperature. So that's what rerun will run it exactly as the way it is. Load engine will just load the engine and ignore any other changes. Edit will load, yeah, I'm not yelling at me because it's so old. Just run. Let me just load an engine that's from the current database because it's grumpy. Okay, Fufulius. So edit will pull all of the settings that you had for that flight, just like rerun, but then it lets you tweak it. So this is handy if you you're playing around and you say, okay, what if it's, say today there's no wind, it's dead. Okay, so I'll change that and then I'll launch. So I'm going 284 feet. And now I want to see what happens if it's really strong, like 14-mile-per-hour winds. Launch. Okay, that one's 279.05. So that didn't make a big change. But so you can tweak those as you go. So that functionality is being added to the launch visualizer as well from here. So yeah, I was supposed to show that off today and they didn't load it. Hopefully the other option was like tonight over the weekend. So I assume it'll be live probably, unless they ran into a problem over the weekend or next week. So if you've got a Launch Visualizer account, you can play with that a little bit. So let's see here. So Tim was using my account last week, and so all my designs got deleted because we were resetting the account to use it for the display. So I am going to upload a new rocket design, and we'll pull my Aspire with no mass in it. And if I had texture files for it, I could attach them here. I don't, so I won't. Whew. Get sleepy. Okay, so the Aspire is loaded. You can see my Aspire over here. And then the launch site, the default is the SCORE launch site down in Pueblo. That's about an hour south of us. That's our kind of default launch site. But let's pick somewhere different to go. Let's use Albuquerque. Give New Mexico a little love with all the fires going on. So they're probably not launching in real life right now. So we'll launch for them. So I've chosen my launch site. It's pretty deserty out there, to be expected. Starting state, so this is my launch angle, my launch guide length. Let's bump that up a little bit because that's a longer rocket. The temperature, it's probably hot down there today. It's hot here, so we'll say 85 degrees. And then we're gonna choose our engine, and let's see what happens with that G77 that I was liking so much earlier. And then we will click to launch. Watching our altitude here, 33, 34, 35, 36. Woohoo, 3,600 feet. Oops. I'm scrolling a little crazy. There we go. And since the Aspire has a streamer, it's coming down on the streamer. So we're just watching this. So that come down slowly. So, woohoo! So other than that, I don't think we have anything else today. Terry's washing his hair this weekend. We appreciate that, Terry. We love clean hair. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Tim should be back next week. I will check on the mass object clicking mark and see if we can get that. At the very least, we can add it to the list of future fixes and things for that. And Rosa on the right-clicking on the mass object show hide. And thanks for sharing that with me, because I didn't know that was a feature either. So yeah, beyond that, check out the Launch Visualizer. It's free to create an account. You could even fly without an account. You're limited a little bit on the motors, but if you make a free login, you can fly up to a G motor. And then if you join subscribe to it, it's $3 a month. So, you know, less than a cup of coffee these days, or less than like half a gallon of gas for a month. And you can play with it and test it out and send us feedback. We love that. We're always tweaking it. And yeah. So Carlos asks, is there a place in RockSim to specify paint thickness? So no. The way you would go about that in RockSim is you would use an all rocket mass override. People have asked about that before. How do I account for paint? In some cases, you know, if you're real light on the paint, you don't make a big difference. It's a really big rocket, maybe it may not make enough of a difference to matter. But in some cases, if you know, have 15 layers of paint and primer and you paint it like a tank, what you would do is, so you would build your rocket, you know, you'll have your weight or whatever in RockSim, build your rocket in real life, and then once you have the final rocket in hand, you can weigh it, get the mass, and then you'll use the overall mass override. So you'll come here, so you've got your name, your components, and then mass override. And you'll click the box and put in the total mass of the rocket, not with the motor in it, just the rocket itself. You'll use it. And then you also, like the parts, have to put in the CG of the rocket. That's when you need to bounce. Usually I just bounce it on my finger, you know, take my rocket and kind of figure out that balance point. It's hard with water in the bottle. But find that point, measure from the front tip of the rocket to that balance point. Because if you don't tell RockSim that, the default will be, the center of gravity will be the tip of the rocket. And in that case, your rocket's gonna be super unstable, or overstable, I guess, in this case, and it won't be accurate. So that's the kind of final, so that's really handy. That's why part of the way we have this is, I built a rocket, I built it in RockSim, and I have an estimated weight. I can kind of play around with it a little bit. Okay, I went and built the rocket for real, and then it doesn't weigh the same. Kind of like Bill's rocket that we had earlier. So that's the other option for Bill to do, is if he just can't figure it out, he can come to this mass override and check the box and just put in that 528 grams or whatever, 200 whatever grams it was, and then put that center of gravity for that rocket and just run the simulations that way. That's the workaround, and that's the quick and dirty way if you don't want to go through and, like we were doing, go through every part and weigh it or whatever. The other way would be to weigh every part that's painted. That just seems like a lot of extra work, Carlos. So you could, Terry also mentions you could put a mass object in the rocket. You can basically, what that entails though is, because you're adding a mass object which is going to be at a fixed point in your rocket, so it's going to be, your mass object's going to be here, so you would need to make sure that mass object is located in the right place to get your CG to the correct place. So you'd have to take your mass object and just move the location back and forth. Let's do this. And this does not weigh enough to actually do this. We need a mass object that weighs a lot. And then just move the location and find your CG. I turned on mass override, that's why it wasn't working. It's like, wait a minute. So that one's a little, so you'll need to slide it, you know, count for the extra weight and then slide it around so the CG of the rocket is in the right place. It's essentially kind of the same thing as the mass override, the all rocket mass override. Either one works. At the end of the day, you need to tell RockSim, how much does my rocket weigh, or how much is the mass, where the center of gravity is, and then this center of pressure location is calculated for that. So with those three things, then RockSim can do your simulations accurately. If it's missing one of those, or one of those is inaccurate, then all bets are off with that. So, so that's how you'd handle basically alternate weight on a rocket. You throw it in RockSim, it's not right. At the end of the day, if you just don't want to mess with it, you're in a hurry, you're just trying to figure out what motor you need for the launch tomorrow, go in, click on mass override, weigh your rocket, figure out where the CG is, and then you can just run and call it good. So that is all. Tim will see you guys next week.